All right, I want to start with a little tour of some current job ads, just to sort of look at who's asking for sample syllabi and under what contexts. Some of you, depending on the field you're in, may never be asked for sample syllabi at any point in the process. Others of you may find that some schools ask for it, others don't. I started with something from Penn. This is a current ad for a lecturer to teach American Sign Language. And here you'll see that they ask for sample syllabi, assignments, and assessments, etc. Asking for a lot there. Here is an English tenure track job asking for evidence of teaching effectiveness, such as sample course syllabi. Religious studies, this is asking for a course outline for a course relevant to those in the job ad. And I'll come back to that point in a moment. My alma mater, Queen's University, in their business school, where, fun fact, I was a classmate of Elon Musk until I dropped out of business school and became a historian, and no regrets, none whatsoever. Here they're asking for course outlines in addition to evals. This surprised me. Tenure track economics job at a Canadian research university asking for sample syllabi. I did not expect to see that in economics. Tenure track assistant professor at a liberal arts college at Whitman. Here they're asking for complete sets of evals or other evidence of demonstrated or potential excellence in undergraduate instruction, opening the door for you to include something like sample syllabi. So you see across a wide range of disciplines, people are asking for syllabi or course outlines, and I want to help you get prepared for that in the event that as soon as perhaps next month, you need to send some of these things in. And for folks who are just joining us, hello, welcome. I'm Ian Petrie from CTL. And I'll share these slides with everyone after the session. One thing I would say that even if schools don't ask for syllabi up front in the job ad, they may come back to you if you're long-listed as supplemental materials. And you might also find, I know you've got lots of things to do, but that drafting some syllabi would actually make you more confident in fielding questions about teaching in a screening interview or in a campus visit. So even if people aren't asking for these in the ads, you might nevertheless want to invest some time and effort into putting together a couple. What sorts of classes should you prep? And again, this is going to depend on the types of jobs you're applying for. I think in general, you want to think about what a sort of bread and butter intro survey or a methods course in your discipline, right? Signaling to a committee your willingness and your qualifications for teaching classes that are considered kind of important service classes, which would often be deputed to the newest assistant professor, but then also putting together an upper level course reflecting your particular area of expertise to show how your actual area of research interest gets translated into teaching and how your research and your teaching can be harmonized, which is going to be extremely important at some institutions. But again, I want to reemphasize, you want to align these materials with the job ad or job ads. Now, I'm not saying you need to prepare 35 different syllabi for the purposes of applying, but you want to, step back, think about the types of jobs you're applying for, and then figure out what are the syllabi that are going to be most likely to be relevant in these contexts. And again, even if they don't ask for syllabi, you want to be ready to talk about how you would teach the classes that they flag in the ad. Even in a screening interview, you want, if they say you're going to be teaching Intro to Western Civ in a screening interview, they might ask you, as I was asked, what textbook would you adopt? Which I thought that was a little early in the process. So again, I want you to be ready for what comes your way. So what should you include in your sample syllabi? And here, I want you to think about how are these syllabi what are they communicating about you as a teacher? And I think that you want to imagine that the committee is partly going to read them in that way and be thinking about how are our students going to perceive a syllabus like this. Right now we're talking about drafting syllabi for the purposes of sending them to a hiring committee, but in many contexts, your syllabus is going to be the first thing that a prospective student sees from you, right? That I hear at Penn, when students advance register, they look for the syllabus. The syllabus speaks for you in some cases, months before you actually meet the students. And this is what I want you to be thinking about. What is that syllabus saying about you, who you are as a teacher? I see that there's some things going on in the chat. I'll check on that when I pop out of screen sharing in just a minute. So what should you include? And some of this is basic stuff and maybe not surprising, but I would say, you want to commit to a format. Is this going to be a class that meets three times a week for an hour, twice a week for 90 minutes, or what have you? I would just use Penn's semester. You can't tailor this to the academic calendar of every school that you're applying to. But I would want your syllabus to communicate, why did you pick 90 minutes 2 times a week? What does that let you accomplish? How are you going to spend that class time? I'd want the syllabus to give us a sense of some of that. The asterisks here I have is if you're applying to a school with a very distinctive course approach, like at Colorado College, where students take one class at a time, the classes last for 3.5 weeks, that's a pretty unique pedagogical circumstance. You probably would want to show that you're thinking about that. But again, generally you can't tailor this. Now somebody might say, your syllabus has 15 weeks, our semester has 12 weeks, how would you adapt to that? And you would have a perfectly cromulent answer to that question. Obviously, a short course description. I would counsel you to try to flesh out the readings or other course materials as much as you can. Granted, in some contexts, the choice of readings might be less interesting or less telling about you. It might be Econ 101 and you pick Greg Mankew's textbook and then that's the reading, and the interesting part that communicates your thoughtfulness as a teacher comes out in other ways. But in other fields, the readings you choose is going to give the committee a sense of your discernment as the designer of classes. And here I'll emphasize the bolded part is that I think you want to not just have the grade breakdown, but if you can flesh out those major assessments, include a grading rubric if that's the way you approach it, right? And also maybe have sample in-class exercises. You don't have to have this all prepped for the whole darn course, but just a sample of some of the activities that you would use. And again, I'm mindful that the things I'm suggesting are making more work for you, but this is work that my colleagues and I would be delighted to support you in. I think you also want to think about, and this is going to vary for each of you, depending on your individual teaching philosophy, what other priorities do you have in communicating with students, with potential students, and that comes out in the syllabus? So whether it's articulating learning objectives, posing key questions, having when the students approach the reading, they know from your syllabus that here are the 3 questions we're trying to answer this week about the Russian Revolution or about plant biology or whatever it is. Some instructors like putting strategies for student success in their syllabus. And if that's something that appeals to you, I think that is something that, again, could make your syllabus stand out to a committee. Again, grounding this in the campus that you're familiar with, you might find that talking about student support resources or talking about office hours and what they're for and how much you want students to make use of them, or important policies such as your approach to late or missed work, because there again, you might have developed some commitments around this that is important for you to articulate, but also says, oh, based on my teaching during COVID, here's how my teaching practice has evolved around building in flexibility and structure, or whatever the case may be. This is just, and this I've taken from the Career Services Academic Job Handbook, which I would recommend to all of you. This is a sample table of contents from a teaching portfolio, just to point out that it includes syllabi, but also a sample study guide, a sample final exam, and sample feedback on students' written work. So again, you might want to go beyond just the syllabus here for the purposes of a teaching portfolio. Again, making that decision may depend on what your disciplinary location is. I want you to think about, do the syllabi that you produce, do they align with what you've said about your teaching in your other materials, right? So that you want to, if your cover letter or your teaching statement have talked about how important active learning is, do we get a sense of that? of such strategies in your syllabus. And that's where, again, you might want to include a sample exercise of here's something we would do in class when we're studying this topic. Similarly, if you talk about your commitment to inclusive teaching practices, how does your syllabus communicate that? And again, you may have priorities with regard to student wellness, particularly in the context of teaching in an ongoing pandemic or ongoing pandemics, as our case appears to be. And again, I think these are the ways in which the individuality of your syllabus can stand out from a stack of 300 applicants or whatever the case may be. So the question here is, how can you stand out in a good way? And there's going to be different ways, right? There's not a simple template for this, and it's going to depend on you as a teacher. Part of it may simply be how well organized this course is and the way in which you articulate to students how the different components of the class fit together, or interesting ways in which you show how you onboard students around learning to read academic articles or primary literature. Maybe you have some really creative assignments, or maybe you just have a really well-structured way of approaching a classic assignment, right? The message here is not that you have to find things that are radically different from what you've done in the past or what others in the field do. Does this seem like a class that would work for the students of the institution that is considering you? But also, does this seem realistic for you in light of the demands of the job, right? In some contexts, the question is going to be, can you make teaching work in a way that it doesn't get in the way of the research demands of the job? And so you don't want to create a syllabus that suggests like you're ignoring the rest of the job and setting up a syllabus where it appears like you're going to be having to spend 20 hours grading every week. And lastly, I would say, don't be afraid to give this document some personality, right? I think sometimes syllabi are inclined towards being bureaucratic. And I think, again, you all have different personalities, but don't be afraid to make this more personable, perhaps than the syllabi that you grew up with as a student. I would say here, given that academia is profoundly conservative in lots of ways, this may not be the time to get extremely experimental with your syllabus. I'm a historian. I probably wouldn't send out a syllabus that is taught in reverse chronology for the purposes of a job application, because for some readers at least, that would appear to do violence to the basic tenets of my discipline. I have taught such a class, by the way, and it went just fine, but that only came later. Just want to touch on, as we saw in the job ads, folks who look for just a course outline. Here, I think the nature of the thing is just a one-pager, where again, you want to have a course description, give an example. Here are some selected readings. Here are the types of things we're going to be reading or listening to or using in the class. And then just a brief account of the grade breakdown and the types of assignments. And so you may find yourself producing these one-pagers rather than a full syllabus. And then last slide, and then we'll hop out of the screen share. I just want to put in a plug for how moving forward CTL can possibly help. We do lots and lots of consultations regarding teaching-related job materials. We want to stay in our lane. We are happy to collaborate with our friends in career services. We want to complement the mentoring that I hope you're getting in your department. We offer mock interviewing. We offer consultations about teaching demonstrations or presentations that you are increasingly likely to be asked to do, sometimes even at research universities as part of a in-person or virtual campus visit. We do lots of mock teaching demos, and we're happy to do all these things with you in person or via Zoom.